Hello, Spark fans. Welcome back to Advancing Spark, where we've had a crazy time recently running between huge big events like Big Data London. We've had our AA Away Day. We've been doing all sorts of crazy stuff. So not that many videos from us, and there's been lots of stuff happening. So today is another news catch-up day. We've got all the September 2023 platform release notes to go through and say, what's going on? Oh, yeah, there's lots of things that have happened. So we're going to take a step through, talk through everything that's gone, and talk about how it affects you and how it affects me, and yeah, all of that good stuff. As always, Advancing Spark's brought to you by Advancing Analytics. We are a data AI and engineering consultancy from the UK, and we help clients across the world advance their analytics desires and needs and all that good stuff. If you need any help, get in touch. Now, as always, if you're new around here, don't forget to like and subscribe, and then yeah, let us know down in the comments of any of these changes. Things that you've been waiting for, you excited about it? What's the thing that you're actually super excited about? There's a few. There's one or two breaking changes that have come out that we need to talk about if you're upgrading to the latest and greatest Databricks runtime version. So yeah, let's go and have a look. So as always, I am in the Azure flavor of the release notes because that's where a lot of our clients tend to be. So we are over on that side. Check out the relevant cloud provider release notes for your good selves. And we're going to start at the bottom and work our way up. So let's have a look. So one, GitHub Apps integration in repos is GA. So if you're using GitHub and using GitHub Apps, you can now actually use that with a bit more confidence in Databricks repos. That's good, nice, easy. We've got this allow list privileges in Unity Catalog. Now, at first I glanced at that and go, what? IP allow lists? And it's not, it's which libraries and init scripts are allowed to be used. You can say, yes, you can spin up a cluster using that particular library, and you can manage that through Unity Catalog. So you can now delegate permission to be able to do that on shared compute. So that's interesting to come in. We've got some more changes to the SDK. So again, the SDK is the newer way of being able to automate all of your builds and production and management of your various different Databricks workspaces. You can see that's got some new changes, some new fields, some new classes and things going in there. So take a look if you're working with the SDK currently. We still need to do a video on that. We all do. We've got the one that caught me out in front of a client when I was talking through, go, no, it's really easy. Your data's over here. Wait, data's gone. Where's data? The Data Explorer has been renamed to the Catalog, or the Catalog Explorer, and it's in the same place. It just has a different name now. So you go and see, mainly because it's not just data anymore. It now has a ton of things, and we're going to see all, machine learning models. You've got feature tables in there. That is where all things go. So it makes sense. It is the Catalog rather than your Data Explorer. But, oh, God. It just changed one morning. I didn't know what was going on. I was like, am I going mad? Another change to the CLI. So the second version of the CLI, we're seeing lots of changes going in, improving it over time, which is great. Got a change to the ODBC driver. There's a couple of changes in here. That ODBC driver, just adding in some more functionality. That one is very useful. So things calling the SQL endpoint. Now go, just give me a small, I'm not asking for the, don't send me every row. Just send me a subset of rows so I can do a data preview. That's just going to make general user experience a lot nicer. So good. Again, another SDK update. We're seeing that kind of go. The pricing system tables now available. So we've looked at system tables before. That's when you can bring in things like who's been using which notebook, who accessed which table, what's my general cluster utilization. And there was a preview in the demo that did some estimated pricing. There's now a full pricing table as part of those system tables, so you can pull it in, regularly update it, and you can see when pricing has changed for various Databricks SKUs. You can make sure your dashboard is using those to actually give you up-to-date real pricing. I will say, I don't believe that takes into account any particular discounts, any enterprise agreements, and any agreements you have to not pay full price probably won't be honored by that pricing table, but you at least see the full, actually, this is what we would pay full price. It's the worst case scenario is how all that stuff works. Now, I might be wrong there. Need to check. Go ask Databricks. I don't know. We've got system tables now including the marketplace schema. So if you've been using Databricks Marketplace and you said, oh God, yeah, that data's good. I'll have that one, that one, that one, that one. And you want to have some information about who's using it and how that's working. You've now got that extra system table so you can go and pull in some information about who's using it. Did someone pull in some marketplace data? We need to know about it. You can now do that via that new system table. Another one that we've had a video about recently is the ability to do row-based kind of dynamic filtering and column-based masking. So just giving you some dynamic security models you can apply within Unity Catalog. We had a look at that. That was really cool. So that came out in public preview during September. Another CLI update. Partner Connect now supports Snowplow. So if you're using Snowplow, you can plug that in. I first read that as Snowpark, and I was like, what? Very different. It's all good. It's fine. Got an update to the VS Code extension. So we're seeing that grow alongside Databricks Connect v2. Terraform provider update. Again, dive into the docs if you're using that currently. Very interesting thing in Databricks asset bundles. So asset bundles are a new way of doing DevOps across Databricks workspaces, where you want to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to take a little bit of some notebooks and a library and a Delta Live table and a job, and some of the things that wouldn't normally be wrapped up in your source control pushing out and was a bit awkward to manage, you can now bundle up into these asset bundles. That's why they're called bundles, and then deploy it to various different workspaces. So yeah, we've been playing around, we've been testing out and trying it with a few clients and just pushing it out. And yeah, getting really positive reviews. So people seem to quite like it. So definitely, if you're struggling with CI/CD across workspaces, because not everything lives in a repo, not everything is source controllable, this is definitely a good thing to take a look at. It is still in public preview, so pinch of salt. But yeah, really, really good to take a look at it. Quick change into if you were using a local folder structure called workspace, you can no longer do that. That's now a reserved word inside your local file space. In Databricks, you cannot have a folder called workspace. They won't let you. Some more updates to the CLIs, more updates to the SDK, more updates to Terraform. That's just moving along. They've changed how emails get sent. So you'll no longer get an email for every single user added to a Databricks account. You'll get access when you're added to a workspace. Slight change. But just hopefully slightly less spammy for literally everybody who's synced into the whole account console. We've got Databricks Runtime 14.0. We'll take a look at that in a second. There's a few interesting changes in there because that represents a big shift in moving to Spark 3.5, but also it looks like how it works with shared clusters and how it works with Spark Connect has changed a few things. There's some limitations inside there that we need to take a look at. Okay, other bits. On-demand feature computation now available in UC. So that is where if we're doing some live model inference and we've got someone pinging our endpoint and saying, right, what's infer the score for this particular these parameters, and we want to work something out on the fly. And the example they're giving is maybe someone's current location or the current temperature. So it needs something that is up-to-date information. So what you can do is you can now write basically a Python function, which is called via the real-time inference, which will return the current state of that feature. So not just a feature table, which is just a giant lookup of static values, but now actually a real-time function to return the current value of a given feature. That is in public preview as part of Unity Catalog, part of that big movement of all your ML flow stuff, all of your model management, all of your model serving, moving over to Unity Catalog. So we're seeing that go in there as well. Speaking of model serving, you can now do GPU-based model serving, and there's another change a little bit further up about a GPU but optimized for LLM serving. So as long as you have those GPUs, you can now go and do that. Again, that is in public preview. That is a gated public preview, so you need to knock and ask and say, please, can you let me onto it? But yeah, if you're trying to serve out anything that needs GPU to make inference actually go as fast as it needs to, that is now available to some. Got version of the Databricks Connect v2 for Scala. So if you are one of those people who've been left behind as a Scala developer and the world has gone Python and SQL mad, and you're like, you know what, I'd quite like to be able to write Scala still, you now can, in preview, start to try and do some of that for your local code development and all that kind of stuff. We've got a sneaky one. We've got Lakeview Dashboards. Now, I had not heard a single thing about Lakeview Dashboards, and I started going through these notes, and I was like, wait, what? What now? What's this called? And essentially, inside Databricks SQL, we've since they released Databricks SQL on the back of the Redash purchase a few years ago, they've had a dashboarding ability in there. And they've essentially said, actually, we're just going to make it better. We're going to build a new UI, a new way of handling data, a new way of building things. So it's just a completely revamped dashboarding tool inside of Databricks on the back of Databricks SQL, all backed by Unity Catalog. So all fairly standard Databricks visualizations that we're used to, the interactivity you get from the various different charts. I was having a little play behind the scenes, and you have essentially a data pane where you can say, I want these tables from Unity Catalog. Oh, and I want some more tables, which is based on a SQL query. Right, okay, that's all my data I'm going to use. And then you move into your visualization and say, right, this one's based on that table, this one's based on that table, and you hook it all up and build it. It's definitely a nicer design experience than the previous dashboard. I don't know it's going to replace all of your existing BI tools, but it's definitely better than it was. So yeah, definitely an interesting thing to go and take a look at. It has been rolled out. If you're using Databricks SQL, you should be able to go and create a dashboard, and you'll now get a choice going, do you want to create a dashboard or a Lakeview dashboard? That's what you get if you go into a Lakeview dashboard. So yeah, go have a look. Interesting stuff. We get to know how people get on with it and some of the crazy stuff people create with it. Don't follow that link. Cool. Again, more improvements for Databricks Connect, moving forwards, Terraform, SDK. I mean, the pace of release with those is currently insane, which is great. Yep, cool. We can now run a job as a service principal. And honestly, we should have been able to do that years ago, but we can now do it, so I am happy. So if rather than have a specific user, and then that user is the person who owns all the jobs, and then they leave the company, and then you have to think about what you do with all your jobs, you can now delegate the running of that to a service principal who has dedicated access, but no one can log in with them and actually steal that access. Makes a lot of sense. You can now do that inside Databricks jobs, and then just inherit that identity and do all that good stuff. So I'm happy with that change. Another change to Visual Studio Code. Again, it's just lots and lots of things coming in, largely small bug fixes, largely kind of, some additional things you can do. ODBC driver, another update to it. Again, just pushing forward, some new functions, keeping parity as new SQL functions come out, making sure that works. It's all going in. Again, inference tables, super interesting. So if we are putting up some kind of model serving, and we get these inference requests coming in going, score that, score that, score that, score that, and then we're passing back the results going, well, yes, that's a yes, that's a no, that's a yes, that's a no, or likelihood to churn is 78%. Whatever that happens to be, this is now kind of a table essentially kind of capturing those incoming requests and capturing the outgoing requests. So you now just have a big old log of, they asked for this, they got this, they asked for this, they got this. And then you can go and use it to manage and debug and do good telemetry, model observability kind of stuff is now in preview. Again, that's another gated preview you need to request access to. But yeah, definitely super interesting to see how that's working. And it just stores it all as a big old Unity Delta table, which is great. More changes, Databricks CLI, SDK, Terraform. They're just showing off by just making all these changes. It's terrible. There used to be a thing with Databricks jobs where it was trying to do so much, it'd run out of concurrency and then just skip some runs, which I didn't want it to do. So now it'll queue things up. So if it runs out of concurrency slots, it'll go, okay, I'll just wait until there's another bit of concurrency free, and then I'll run it. Good. Makes a lot of sense. I mentioned this, so GPU model serving optimized for large language models. If you are building your own assistants, ChatGPT style things, you're hosting your own models, you're trying to do that, maybe you pulled down a big model and fine-tuned it, you need to host it somewhere. There is now model serving optimized for large language models. Again, you do need to request access to that preview. We've got another Databricks runtime, which is in beta. Again, we'll have a look at 14.0 first. You can now give people the ability to add external storage. You don't have to be a big Metastore admin kind of person to be able to do that. You can just tighten up what that security model looks like. And finally, Lakehouse Federation is now available on single user clusters. Lakehouse Federation is where we're being able to go and query other things external to our lake. So if we're hooking up a Postgres DB, you can have that as a federated item inside Unity Catalog, and people can query it as if it was a table, and it's actually then going off and querying the database and bringing stuff back. You can now do that from a single user cluster. Whoa! Loads of things happening there. So, have a look at this thing. So, one of the things released, noticed there, was the GA of Databricks Runtime 14.0. And again, mad how quickly we're cycling through these things. As always, whenever it is a major change. So 14.1, 2, 3, they're minor changes. 12, 13, 14, they are major changes. Expect to see some break-in changes whenever Databricks decide that they're going to go up a major version. Now, big thing here, it is now Spark 3.5.0. The big major shift in the version of Spark that they're actually using. You've got the normal release notes. You can go and have a look at that. You can go and have a see what's actually happening over there. Okay, I don't think there's anything crazy in the release notes in terms of what they're doing. So some changes. Compatibility to structured streaming is interesting. We'll have a look at that. And there's some new functionality, some new clauses. and a whole load of bug changes. There's a ton of things that I've got in there that is just changing what's actually happening. Let's stick with the release notes for now. Let's see what's actually happening. So we can now do a user-defined table function in Python. So most times we're using a UDF, a user-defined function. It's a scalar function. I hand it one value and it gives me one value back. And so if I've got a million rows, it's going to call that thing a million times, going that value, that value, that value, unless you switch to vectorized, which is slightly different. Now we've got table value function. So you just pass it one thing and it passes back a table of data that you can then go and work with. I've not at all had to play with that. I don't know about the performance of that because notoriously Python UDFs aren't great. But actually this is doing a table, not individual values. Maybe it's not too bad. We need to have a look at how that works. Certainly people have been using them for a decade in SQL Server. So definitely loads of good use cases for it. It'll be interesting to see how people use it. We've got a preview of row level concurrency. So concurrency inside Delta tables is optimistic writes, essentially. So if I've got, my Delta table has two files, it's a big chunky two files, and I've got two people writing, and they're impacting different files. So I've got some updates that go into one file, updates that go into another file, and some appends. That's fine. Delta will actually let them happen at the same time. But if I've got two kind of fairly big updates, and they might try and update the same file, even if different records inside the same file, it'll currently error and go, I don't know how to figure that out. You're trying to do things in the same file. Not anymore. So row level concurrency, powered by things like the deletion vectors, is allowing people to go, well, actually, you can edit the same file as long as you're not editing the same row inside that file. So enabling row level concurrency just to speed up operations, to make things more concurrent, to make it less likely that you'll get kind of, your file level locking happening. Now, I have not at all had to play with how that works, but definitely very, very interesting how that's going to come in and fit. Default working directory, if you were ever assuming that the current location, if you say, right, okay, in the current directory, go back a step and go up, that has now changed. So be a little bit careful if any of your code is assuming the working directory that your notebooks will be in. They've made a change as part of this, and that'll affect your shell commands. It'll affect any kind of Python or any top level code not actually using Spark. Will change where it's running on the driver. Spark Connect. So essentially, shared clusters are now using Spark Connect. So it's going to be different. And a little bit further down, there's some changes in terms of how shared clusters are going to work, because it's no longer actually running directly on the cluster. It's going through an abstraction layer because of Spark Connect. So yeah, it'll be interesting. You can no longer use internal Spark APIs, which is a change, and we'll need to make sure we get used to that change. And yeah, you can now run an API to work out what Spark version you're on. So, breaking changes. And there's an unusual amount of breaking changes for a big update version. So one, you can't use the SQL context, or the Spark context, which is interesting. So just, there's going to be a warning coming up if you're currently using that. So if you're using SC all over the place, be careful. I don't know why you are. You don't really need to use it. But if you're using it, watch out. So all things like being able to look at RDD elements, or if you're writing things the old school way, if you're accessing the RDDs rather than data frames, a lot of that stuff is going to stop working. And to be fair, it's about time. You shouldn't have been working like that for quite some time now. The Catalyst engine probably writes better code than you do. Sorry. So some of these changes is like, yeah, okay, that's fine. That does make sense. But yeah, be aware of those breaking changes if you are switching to Spark to Databricks runtime 14. Bigger changes for me in the world of streaming. So in 3.5, all streaming functionality is supported. Great. But in 14.0, for each batch and the streaming query listener are disabled in shared clusters. Now, we use for each batch quite a lot, especially with autoloader and our various kind of trigger once stream processes. For each batch is actually really, really common for us. So definitely interesting. You can't do that on shared clusters. Some notebook integration is missing. It's not going to actually work as you expect just yet, which is interesting. For each batch itself has changed. So you can no longer access variable outside of for each batch. You can't print anything. And if you're trying to access the Spark session to get any other context, instead of just using Spark session, you've now got df.spark session. It's appending in a child attribute of your Spark session. So yeah, be a little careful. That's a fairly big chunky change that we're seeing being put in here. Again, stream query listener, if you had anything that was triggered as a result of changes to that thing and you're doing some kind of asynchronous triggers, That has also changed about what it can do. Again, similar, can't reference Spark. It's now self.spark. You can't print things. Be a little careful what does and doesn't work. So, yeah, fairly big, chunky changes in terms of what's actually happening here. Some Delta table things are no longer working. The _J pile, because they're going to be based on the JVM. You're now separated from the JVM, which is weird and interesting, right? So, yes, be a little bit careful. Some of these changes might hit you. SQL's not too much. There's a few things likes of that are no longer supported, but that probably won't be hit most of the time. And there's now Scala things that you couldn't do on shared cluster, but you can now do. So there's more stuff that's actually come in. Yeah, interesting. So if you're switching to Databricks Runtime 14, just be aware some things are no longer possible. They've changed the architecture of how it's actually connecting to the rest of the Spark cluster, so it's going to be different. Have a look through those release notes and go, is any of our code actually using this stuff? Are we using SC anywhere? Are we using for each batch, and we're currently using a shared cluster? I mean, most of our stuff we switched over to be using a single access cluster for the autonomous, just run every hour kind of engineering jobs. But you might still have people that are trying to develop and trying to test using a shared cluster rather than personal compute. If you are, you need to be evaluating why are you using shared compute for that stuff. Why are you using those things in different scenarios? So some of it makes entire sense when you think about the direction Databricks are going in terms of what compute you use for different roles. Some of it you might not have thought about, and you might not have evaluated, wait, why are we using that cluster? In which case you're going to be caught by some of these changes. So yeah, be a little bit careful, but it's otherwise there's some really positive things in there. We're seeing a lot of movement, and Spark 3.5 got loads of good stuff in if you have a look through the release notes. Whoa! Loads of stuff, as I said. So tons and tons of platform level changes. Again, check out the Lakeview database, data dashboards. There's a load of stuff in there that's actually really interesting to see. Take a look at Spark 14 because there's just new things. Really, really cool to see all the new things going into Unity Catalog around model serving and observability and actually sort of how all that stuff is actually managed, especially making it even cooler for running LLMs. Just tons and tons and tons and tons of new stuff in there. So, right. Need another cup of tea. That's a huge amount of stuff to get through. Thanks for sticking with us. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe and let us know what out of that pile is actually good for you. Let us know if any of those breaking changes are actually going to really break things for you. And we'll share some advice if we come across it. We'll let you know how it goes. Don't forget to check out our next Ask Databricks, which is on Wednesday the 18th. We're going to be digging into the world of structured streaming and maybe talking about for each batch some more. We'll see. I'll catch you then. Cheers.